Right, well, thanks for that, James. Let's turn to those two MPs, Dominic Raab, Esher and Walton, Mark Reckless, Rochester and Strood. Gentlemen, same question for you both to kick off with. Do you accept that your image needs a little improving, especially as far as people who regard you as the party of the rich are concerned? Dominic Raab?
No, not. I mean, I wouldn't concentrate on the image and the politics of image at all. I'd concentrate on the substance, because over a period of 5 years, that's what delivers credibility. I think the critical thing at the moment in terms of the squeezed middle that we're hearing so much about is that we have a coherent deficit reduction plan which is keeping interest rates low, because the one thing that would really hurt the squeezed middle is a hike in interest rates.
Mark Reckless?
I think what we need to do is we want to make sure we're helping get the low paid out of tax, and the coalition is aiming to lift the tax threshold all the way over the Parliament to £10,000, and that's a policy many in the Conservatives have been pushing for years. Lord Saatchi as party chairman, John Redwood's been pushing that. It's something I strongly believe in, and I hope we're going to be accelerate that, lifting those lowest paid out of tax, and if necessary we may be able to raise money by taxing the very rich much more effectively than we are now, because the 50p tax rate is raising little, if any, revenue. Yet on the other hand, a foreigner can buy a house for £20-30 million in central London, and the only tax he or she pays is £25 a week council tax.
So, in other words, tax wealth rather than income.
And I think there are ways we can do that better at the very top end of the spectrum. For instance, supposedly there's 5% tax duty on homes over £1 million, but not many people are paying that because the very rich put those houses into companies so as to avoid that stamp duty. Similarly, with capital gains tax, foreign residents aren't generally paying capital gains tax. What I would like to see is capital gains tax applied to expensive house and land price sales through the land registry, and then if someone's got an exemption, then they can show that to the Inland Revenue and therefore avoid the capital gains. But otherwise, I think the very rich people from overseas should be paying capital gains tax, and they should also be paying the stamp duty. And right. If we can get more money from those prime central London property where there's tens of billions now invested from overseas, that could actually raise money to allow us to take the lowest paid out of tax, and at the same time we should reduce this top rate of tax of 50p because it's not really raising money. And I think if we say we can reduce the 40p tax rate to 38 or 39 while bringing down the 50p tax rate to 45 or 40 over time, I think we would again become a centre for enterprise and boost growth in our economy, right, as well as the tax take.
Dominic Raab, do you think that would help?
I think there's lots of sensible, practical suggestions in there. If I think of the three big priorities that I'd like to see, I mean, one, we've got to get the economy driving growth, creating jobs, which aside from being important for the economy, actually helps the unemployed and brings in revenue, so it has a big social dimension as well, which is often underplayed. The second thing for me is denting national debt. We talk about deficit, but we don't talk about debt enough. And the National Institute for Economic and Social Research estimate that if we don't dent the 3.8 trillion of public sector liabilities that we now have, each one of the next generation, each one of our children, will have to pay £200,000 in tax each over the course of their lifetime just to cut even. So there is still a big job to do to make sure Britain is cutting its coat according to its cloth, because the biggest unfairness of all is the intergenerational one of dumping this debt and the higher taxes that go with it on the next generation.
And I'm sure you'd agree with that, Mark Reckless, but the problem with your prescription, well, there are a couple of problems with it, aren't there? First, if you cut the 50% top rate, they will say, your critics will say, and indeed a lot of the people you need to support you, desperately need to support you, will say, there they go again. They give us all these fine words about not being a party for the rich. Look what they're doing. They're cutting the top rate of tax for the people who can most afford to pay it.
I mean, I don't think that will lose much in the way of revenue, and what I would like to see is...
It's impression as well, though, isn't it? It's not just the actual hard facts. I mean, obviously you're right. A lot of people say you're right in that it wouldn't cost a huge amount, but it's the message it was sent, isn't it?
Well, I think if we look at taxing the very rich on their wealth, particularly in very undertaxed areas like prime central London property for overseas residents, we could raise a significant amount of money from the very wealthy in order to take the low paid out of tax. And I think that would be a very good message politically, as you say, but also the right thing to do economically to get the economy growing. But the absolute key on which the coalition is just united all the way through, and I think that's one reason why the markets have so much credibility in our policy, is that we're committed to the deficit reduction. We're now seeing interest rates at only 2.5% for government debt compared to 4% when the coalition came into power. And that allows us to make us very substantial savings. Over time, that will pay for the whole of policing in the country. So the key is keeping the deficit reduction, but within that, we certainly can have more effective taxation, which makes the rich pay on the very wealthy who are not paying tax on wealth and very high value property in this country, and we can use that money to help the poor.